complicated for board exam purposes. So, ituturo ko sa inyo yung trick para hindi na kayo mag-solve ng mas mahaba. 4.5 months. And lastly, nandito na tayo sa ating linear programming. Sa linear programming, this is masyadong complicated for board exam purposes. So, ituturo ko sa inyo yung trick para hindi na kayo mag-solve ng mas mahaba. So, unang-una, ang step 1 natin sa linear programming is isulat yung objective function dahil yun yung kailangan natin i-solve. And ang objective function natin dito is to maximize the contribution margin. To maximize the contribution margin, kailangan kunin natin yung ilang units ang produce natin kay A, which is 32 times A, pati kay B, 24 times B. So, ito yun, letter A. Yan ang ating objective function. Ano yung ating constraints? Ang constraints natin is meron lang tayong 240 hours sa sewing and 192 hours sa finishing. So, pwede nating sabihin na per units na ipoproduce natin kay A, kailangan natin ng 4 hours. Per units na kailangan i-produce natin kay B, kailangan natin ng 2 hours sa sewing division. So, this is less than or equal to 240 hours. Sa finishing, less than or equal to 190 hours. So, kailangan ni A ng 2 hours, kailangan ni B ng 4 hours. Yan ang dalawang constraints natin. So, we use these constraints to maximize the contribution margin. So, number 46. How many units of A and B must be produced to maximize the contribution margin? So, paano ba natin yan makukuha? Actually, sobrang haba nito. To the point na hindi ko na siya gustong i-recommend na gawin nyo. Kasi, ang gagawin nyo dito, i-define yung objective function, nagawa na natin yan. Tapos, i-establish yung constraints, nagawa na rin natin yan. Tapos, from these constraints, ipa-plot natin yung feasible region, hanapin natin yung mga intercepts nila. Ibig sabihin, from these constraints, maglalagay tayo ng 0 dito sa A, tapos i-solve for B. Ganun din, solve for B, gagawin natin 0 yung A, tapos dito rin sa kabilang equation. Tapos makukuha natin tong graph na to. From this graph, ipa-plot natin yung feasible region. So, ito yon, kung saan sila nag-i-intersect. From this feasible region, kukunin natin yung intersections sila or yung ating mga corner points. So, that is yung 048. And this is yung hindi natin alam. Hindi natin alam yan. And this is 60, 0. So from this, ikukunin natin itong ating corner point na nandito. So using the first constraint, substitute lang natin yung value, tapos makukuha natin yung A is equal to 48, tapos substitute natin itong value nito sa equation 2. Or equation A, depende sa atin, parehas lang makukuha natin yan. Makukuha natin ang B is equal to 24. So, 48 and 24. Tapos, that is the maximum contribution margin. I-substitute natin siya dun sa ating maximize function. So, hindi ko nire-recommend na gawin nyo to. I do not really recommend this. Ganto siya i-solve. Using this problem, may kita nyo may given sa ating choices. Tingnan yung choices natin. A, 120, 60, 48, 92, 82, 112. From this, hanapin na lang natin sino yung feasible. Sino yung feasible? Alam natin yung constraints natin. Ito yung constraints natin sa sewing division. Ito yung constraints natin sa finishing division. From this, i-substitute na lang natin siya. Yung mga given nila. So, alam natin dito, constraint 1 pa lang. Lalagpas na siya sa 240 hours. So, X na kaagad, di ba? Not feasible na kaagad siya. Dito rin, substitute lang natin siya. Lalagpas na kaagad sa 240 hours. So, mali na kaagad. Mali rin tong C. Di ba? So, from this, isa lang talagang possible value na magiging sagot. Letter D lang. Siya lang magiging feasible sa lahat ng constraints natin. So, letter D ang sagot. Ulitin ko ang ginawa natin, trial and error. From these choices, sinubstitute natin siya dun sa constraints. Tapos titingnan natin kung feasible ba o hindi. So, lahat sila hindi feasible except kay letter D. What if ang nangyari? May mga choices na feasible. So, ang gagawin nyo doon, hahanapin nyo yung pinakamalaking contribution margin na mapro-provide. So, paano yun? Isusubstitute nyo siya dun sa maximize function natin. So, that is 32A plus 24B. Kung sino may pinakamalaki dun sa lahat ng feasible, siya yung magiging sagot. Is that clear? Huwag nyo nang gawin itong formula na to. Sobrang haba and baka makulangan kayo ng oras para sa ibang problem. So, ito, cost of capital. Ngayon, ang tinatanong sa atin dito is yung cost of debt capital. Okay. Okay. So, paano ba ginagawa to? So, discuss muna natin uli yung effective interest rate. Effective interest rate. Kapag ang ating face amount is equal sa ating proceeds, we assume na ang ating effective interest rate is also the stated interest rate. Next, if our face amount is not equal sa ating proceeds, then ang ating effective interest rate is not the same sa ating stated interest. We actually use yung ating dalawang way, trial and error. Gagamit tayo dito ng interpolation. Hindi ko na ituturo sa inyo yan dahil mag-trial and error na lang kayo pag pinapa-interpolate kayo. Masyadong mahaba na yan. Or, if you want, you can use yield to maturity. So, ano ba yung formula nitong yield to maturity? So, the yield to maturity is this. Yield to maturity is equal to nominal interest plus yung ating face amount minus proceeds divided by the term over the face times 40% plus proceeds times 60%. So, ganyan siya. Actually, ang ginagawa natin sa yield to maturity, ina-estimate lang talaga natin yung ating effective interest rate. Dahil ang effective interest rate natin, yung actual na makuha natin, makuha lang talaga natin yan by interpolation. Pero to estimate yung ating effective interest rate, we can use this formula. Yield to maturity, nominal interest plus face minus proceeds over the term, all over face times 40% plus proceeds times 60%. So, for this problem, ang effective interest is 10%. Tapos, nagpe-pay tayo ng income tax at 30%. Ang ating cost of debt is always after tax. After tax yan. So, ang ating cost of debt is 10 times 70%. That is letter B, 7%. Okay, number 48 naman tayo. News company sells 15 years, 1 million par value bonds, paying annual interest at 12% coupon rate, and the bonds were issued at 1,100,000 before deducting 30,000 flotation cost incurred in the process. The firm's tax rate is 30%. What is the approximate yield to maturity to estimate the after-tax cost of debt? Okay. So, ito yung yield to maturity formula natin. Yung kanina, nakita ko. Yield to maturity. So, nominal interest natin. So, that is 1 million times 12%. That is 120,000. Plus, ano yung face amount natin? Face amount natin is 1 million. Ano yung proceeds natin? 1,100,000. Yan yung issued price. Minus 30,000. Kasi yung flotation cost, ano yan? Babayaran natin yan. Diba? So, deduction yan sa ating proceeds. So, 1,070,000. All over, anong term? 15 years. Next. Face amount, 1 million times 40%. Plus, proceeds. Anong proceeds natin? 1,070, di ba? 1,070,000 times 60%. Okay? So, try nga natin. 70 divided by 15. 1 million minus 170 divided by 15. So, tapos add natin yan sa 120. So, ang nasa taas natin is 115,333. Ayan. Over 1 million times 40%, that is 400. 1,070,000 times 60%, that is 642. So, in total, 1042. So, kunin natin 115,333 divided by 1042. That is 11.068. Ayan. Multiply natin sa after tax. So, tax natin is 30%. So, multiply by 70%. That is equal to 7.75. Ayan. Ayan siya. Yung after tax na to. So, letter A. Okay, number 9. 49 pala. A firm has a preferred stock of with 10 pesos annual dividend and a market issue price of 97.5. And in addition, a flotation cost of 2 pesos and 50 cents per share must be paid. What is the cost of preferred stock? So, ang cost of preferred stock natin is cost of preferred stock. Tandaan nyo, that is dividend over issued price minus the flotation cost. Wala siyang growth rate ha, kasi fixed ang dividends natin dito. Okay? Okay, so walang ano yan. Fixed ang dividend natin. So 10 over 95. Tama ba? Kasi 97.5 minus 2.5. So 10 divided by 95, that is equal to 10.53%. So, yan ang ating cost of preferred stock. Next, ito na tayo, dividend growth model. Ang dividend growth model natin, actually, ganito yan. Cost of new stock, new equity. Tapos, ito ang cost of equity natin na lang. Or retained earnings. So, paano makuha yan? That is, dividend sub 1 over price sub 0 minus, may minus ba? Wala, actually. Walang minus yan dahil this is a retained earnings. Walang minus sa ating flotation cost pag retained earnings. So, this is plus G. How about sa new issuance? D sub 1 over price of 0 minus flotation cost plus growth rate. So, ano ibig sabihin ng D sub 1? Ibig sabihin yan yung dividends natin 1 year from now. Okay? Yung price of 0, ibig sabihin yan yung price natin ngayon, market price natin ngayon. Okay? So, the cost of issuing a new common stock is, lagay natin, currently sells at 55, may flotation cost na 5, may dividends tayo na 5 pesos per share, tapos magkakaroon ng dividend growth na 10%. So, ang D sub 1 natin, that is 5 pesos times 1.1. So, in the future, 1 year from now, mag-release tayo ng dividend at 5.5 pesos. So, okay. So, ang ating cost of new issuance of common stock is 5.5 all over 55 minus 5 plus 10%, which is equal to 21%. 21% yan. How about dito sa retained earnings? This is 5.5 all over 55 plus 10% pa rin. That is equal to 20%. Nakakasunod? I hope that is clear. Next, using CAPM. So, ang CAPM, opposite of dividend growth rate method, kasi dito, kino-consider naman natin ang risk. Dito kasi, kino-consider lang natin yung returns na pwede natin makuha, yung dividends. Dito, kasama na yung risk. So, using CAPM, ang ating cost of equity is equal to risk-free rate plus the beta or the volatility times the market return minus risk-free rate. And etong dalawang to, this is what we call the risk premium. So, yung difference nila, yung market return and the risk-free rate is the risk premium. So, if given ang risk premium, yan na kagad yung gagamitin natin, di ba? Okay, what is the cost of capital using CAPM? So, substitute lang natin, 5% plus 1.5 times 12% minus 5%. So, simplify. This will return to 15.5%. Try nga natin. 1.5 times 0.7 plus 0.05. That is 15.5 nga. Tama. Ito naman. Dito na tayo sa pagkuha ng WACC, weighted average cost of capital. So, after tax cost of debt, alam niyo na kaagad yan kapag wala namang sinabi, a-assume na natin na ang stated interest is the effective interest, what I mean. Kapag walang sinabi sa problem, i-assume natin na ang stated interest is the effective interest. So, ang after tax cost of debt natin, ang tax rate natin is 25. So, 12% times 75%. Ganyan. That is 9%. So, yan ang ating cost of debt. Ang cost of common equity naman natin, may given ba dito? Wala. Pero, given dito yung mga market return, risk-free rate, yung beta. So, masolve natin yung cost of equity using CAPM. Di ba yun naman yung nahanap niya CAPM eh. So, cost of equity is equal to 14%. Ay, mali. That is the market return eh. Yung risk-free, 10% plus 1.2 times yung difference na nila, 4%. 14 minus 10% yan. So, try natin. Tama. That is equal to 14.8. So, nandito na tayo. Retained earnings breakpoint. So, ang retained earnings breakpoint, ito yung point na pag lumagpas dito, kailangan na mag-issue ng bagong shares. So, paano yan kinukuha? That is retained earnings balance over equity ratio. So, ang equity ratio natin is 400 million divided by 500 million. That is 80%. Diba? 80%. Tapos, ang RE balance natin is 300 million. So, we have 300 million divided by 0.8. That is 375 million. So, pag lumagpas sa 375 million, kailangan na natin mag-issue ng bagong shares. Kasi, di ba, una, kapag nag-invest tayo, kapag kailangan natin ng funds, kukuha muna tayo sa retained earnings. Pag hindi na kaya ng retained earnings, mag-i-issue na tayo ng bagong shares. So, pag lumagpas tayo sa 375 million, yung pangangailangan natin for the whole project, kailangan na natin mag-issue ng bagong shares. Kaya, retained earnings breakpoint. Okay. What is the weighted average cost of capital? So, ang weighted average cost of capital natin, ang cost of debt, is equal to 9%. Di ba? Ang cost of equity is equal to, ano nakuha natin kanina? 14.8%. So, this means, i-multiply natin to sa weights nila. 100 divided by 500, this is 20%. This is 80%. So, ang total weighted average cost of capital nila, kunin natin 0.09 times 20%, tapos 0.148 times 80%. Ang total na weighted average cost of capital is 13.64%. So, letter B. Ito na. Nandito na tayo sa capital budgeting. Tandaan nyo lang din sa capital budgeting, ang isa sa pinaka-crucial dito is yung net investment. Ang net investment, ito yung cash outflow natin at the beginning. So, ano ba yung laman ng ating cash outflow? Andyan yung ating cost of the new project, yung cost. Andyan yung ating directly attributable costs. Ito yung capitalizable, di ba? Capitalizable yan. So, yan yung dinidepreciate natin. Tapos, andito rin yung ating additional working capital. Tapos, nandito rin yung ating deductions. So, if ever man meron tayong avoidable cost, i-deduct natin yan. And that is always net of tax. Tapos, i-deduct din natin yung ating proceeds from sale of old equipment. So, ano yan? Yan yung ating salvage value, kung meron man. Or kung walang salvage value, yung actual selling price niya, kung nabenta natin yung old asset. Tapos, kung may difference yung book value sa ating proceeds, magkakaroon kasi tayo dyan ng gain or loss. So, meron tax effect yan. So, minus tax savings if may loss, tapos plus tax due if meron tayong gain. Okay ba? Ganyan siya. So, ano yung net investment natin? Kailangan natin ng 900,000 na cost. Meron tayong additional 100,000 for shipping. Tapos meron tayong additional working capital na 20K. Kailangan pa ba natin itong iba? Wala tayong given information dito, so zero sila lahat. So, ang ating net investment is 1020. Saan? Ito yung ating net investment. Or ang ating cash outflow. Okay. So, payback period. Yung operating cash flow natin, given na 400,000. Yan yung cash flow na natin. Since ang ating net investment is 1,020,000, tapos ang cash outflow natin is uniform, pwede natin makuha ang payback period natin by 1,020 divided by 400,000 na cash inflow. So, try nga natin. 1,020 divided by 400, that is equal to 2.55 years. So, we will use this pag uniform ang ating cash inflow. Pero kapag not uniform, iisa-isahin natin per year. Hanggang sa kailan tayo magkaroon ng payback period. Alright, number 59. What is the accounting rate of return based on initial investment? So, may dalawa tayong way to solve for ARR. Actually, dalawa yan, di ba? Average net income over initial investment. And yung ating initial investment, this can also be average investment. Actually, kapag naka-encounter kayo ng ganitong problem, tingnan nyo muna kung ano yung hinihingi niya. Initial investment ba? Kapag hindi, check nyo kung average investment. Kapag wala siyang sinabi, hinihingi niya lang accounting rate of return, itry nyo parehas kung ano yung lalabas. Okay? Kasi wala talagang rule kung sino yung susundin natin dito. Kung initial ba siya or average investment. But to be safe, just try both. Kung ano yung lalabas. Kapag silent. Okay ba? Ito namang average net income. Hindi yan yung beginning plus ending divided by 2 ha. Yung average net income na yan, kukunin natin lahat ng net income for the years. Kuyari, 2 years ang given, so 10,000 plus 30,000, that is 20,000 yung average nila. Ganun siya. Hindi siya beginning plus ending divided by 2. Hindi ganun. Kukunin natin lahat ng net income for the years, divide by ilang years yun. So for this, ano naman siya? Constant naman ang net income niya. Pero given ba? Hindi. Given dito ay cash inflow. Di ba? Cash flow to, 400,000. Meron pa bang given? Wala. Cash inflow lang. Now, ang ating capitalizable cost is 900 plus 100,000, di ba? So that is 1 million. Ang depreciation nito divided by 4, that is equal to 250,000 na depreciation. Now, ang net income, to get the net income, dinideduct natin dyan yung depreciation. Di ba? Pero, para makuha yung cash inflow, tama ba na i-deduct yung depreciation? Hindi, di ba? Kaya ina-add back natin yung depreciation. Di ba? To convert net income to cash inflow, i-add back natin lahat ng non-cash expenses. Okay? So, baliktad naman dito. Cash inflow yung given, yung depreciation, makuha natin yung net income, hindi given. So, i-work back lang natin. So, 400 minus 250 is equal to 150. Yan ang ating net income. So, makuha natin ang ARR, that is equal to 150 over anong ating net investment? 1,020,000. So, that is equal to 14.71%. Ganyan siya. What is the net present value? So, nakita natin kanina, nagkaroon tayo ng cash outflow at year 0, 1,020,000. Tapos, every year, 1, 2, 3, 4. May operating cash flow tayo na 400,000. Diba? Operating cash flow yan. Pero tandaan nyo, at year 4, end ng year 4, meron tayong working capital eh. So, pwede na natin uli magamit niyang working capital na yan. So, plus 20K na terminal cash flow. Okay, ulit-ulitin natin na ano yung relevant cash flows natin. We have initial cash flow, cash outflow. Meron tayong operating. Meron tayong terminal cash flow. Yan yung relevant sa atin. And ang relevant cash flow is just the incremental cash flow. Ano lang yung nagbago? Okay, so wala tayong pakialam dun sa mga existing na. Dun lang sa nagbago. Okay, what is the net present value? So, ganito na lang, shortcut na natin. PV of cash flow from operation. PV of cash flow from terminal cash flows. PV of initial investment. So, kunin nga natin ang kanilang present value. So, alam natin, this is 400,000. This is 20,000 working capital. And this is 1,020,000. Mumultiply natin siya sa kanilang PV factors. Ang PV factor ng ating initial investment is always 1. Kasi year 0 eh. Di ba? Year 0 siya. So, always 1. So, this is 1,020. Deduction kasi this is a cash outflow. How about this? Operating cash flow. So, gamitin natin yung ordinary annuity since na-earn naman natin siya at the end of the year. So, 3.1699. Ito naman, 0.6830. Solve natin na. So, 400,000 times 3.1699 is equal to 1,206,790. Tapos, ito naman, 20,000 times 0.6830, that is 13,660. Tapos, ang sum nila lahat is 261,620. So, ito ang ating NPV. Tama ba? Use this information for numbers 61 to 64. A company is considering replacing its existing machinery. Its existing machine has a carrying value of 50,000. Its currently depreciated annually at a cost of 40,000. The cost of purchasing a new machine is 200,000. If the new machine is bought, the old machine will be sold for 60,000. If the machine is not bought, the existing machine will be repaired at a cost of 50,000. It is estimated that the machine will be usable for 4 years with no salvage value. However, at the end of the 4 years, the machine is fully depreciated. Fully depreciated na siya, but it will be actually sold for 20,000. So, mabibenta siya kahit yung book value niya ay 0. The company expects that this replacement will create an annual cash savings from operating expenses of 100,000. The cost of capital is 10%, the tax rate is 25%. So, ang hinahanap sa atin, mga cash flows. Initial cash outflow, operating annual cash inflow, and terminal cash inflow. So, ano ba yung tatlong yan? Ang initial cash outflow, ito yung nangyari sa year 0. Ibig sabihin, yan yung initial na outflow nga natin, initial cash outflow nga. So, yun. Sa year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4, may tinatawag tayong operating cash flow. Yan yung in-earn natin yearly. And at the end, sa year 4, meron pa tayong isang cash flow na kasama dyan. That is the terminal cash flow. Yung terminal cash flow, yan yung na-earn natin dahil tatapos na yung ating project or yung ating asset. So, ano yan? Yung proceeds from the sale of asset, yung asset na na-acquire natin, ibebenta natin siya. So, kung nabenta natin siya at the end of its life, yun. Tapos, meron tayong less tax due plus tax savings. So, ano ba yung tax due and tax savings? Nangyayari lang yan if yung ating proceeds is not equal to the book value or the carrying value. So, paano nangyari yun? In this example, fully depreciated na yung machine. So, ibig sabihin, ang book value niya ay 0. Pero may proceeds tayo sa kanya na 20,000. Ibig sabihin yan, nagkaroon tayo ng gain na 20,000. Tama ba? Yung gain na 20,000 na yan, this is taxable. So, taxable to. Dahil nagkaroon tayo ng gain, multiply natin siya sa tax na 25%, that is equal to 5,000. Tama ba? So, mayroon tayong tax due na 5,000 kailangan natin bayaran yan. Tapos, ang proceeds natin is 20,000. Okay? Kapag loss naman, that is a tax savings kasi deduction yun sa ating taxable income. Dahil bumaba yung tax income, bababa ang ating tax liabilities. Di ba? So, 0 to. Ano naman tong working capital recovered? Working capital recovered, yan yung ating working capital at the start na nilagay natin sa investment. Tapos, at the end of its life, pwede na kasi natin yung gamitin sa ibang bagay. Tandaan nyo na lang din, itong working capital recovered is no tax effect. Walang tax effect yan. Dahil working capital lang naman yan. Diba? Bumalik lang sa'yo, pwede mo lang uli gamitin. Now, this is the decommissioning cost. So, in case man may ganyan, that is a deduction sa ating terminal cash inflow. Okay? So, ang total cash flow natin for terminal cash flow, that is 15,000. Which is the same, letter D. Next, itong initial cash flow. Ito yung na-discuss natin kanina. Ano ba yung laman yan? Yung purchase price, which is 200,000. Ito yung lahat 200,000. Meron pa ba? Meron tayong avoidable cost, 50,000. Now, ang avoidable cost is always net of tax. Tandaan nyo yan avoidable cost is always net of tax. So, 50,000 times 75%. So, that is 37,500. Deduction. Okay? Proceeds from the sale of old asset. So, nabenta natin yung old asset, di ba? Pwede na siya ibenta at 60,000. Tandaan nyo na lang din, meron tayong gain na makukuha sa kanya. Dahil ang proceeds natin is 60,000. Tapos, ang ating book value sa kanya is 50,000. Tama ba? Carrying value niya. Proceeds natin, 60,000. So, ang ating gain is 10,000. Multiply natin yan sa ating tax rate. Meron tayong tax due na 2,500. So, that is an addition naman. So this is 2,500. So 200 minus 37,500 minus 60,000 plus 2,500, that is equal to 105,000. Letter C. Next, ito na tayo sa operating cash inflow. Ang operating cash inflow, ito naman yung ating na-earn sa year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. Okay? So, paano yan nakukuha? Actually, there's 3 ways to solve for this. Unang-una, kukunin natin yung net income, tapos i-add back na lang natin yung depreciation, which is yung non-cash expenses. Diba? Kasi, nangyari dito, para makuha ang ating net income, i-deduct natin yung depreciation, tapos kukunin natin yung tax, tapos i-add back natin yung depreciation. Bakit natin kailangan i-add back? Dahil hindi naman siya cash outflow. Na-deduct natin siya dito, so kailangan i-add back natin. Tama ba? Kaya ang operating cash flow natin is 77,500. Or, we can use this. Kunin natin yung savings natin kasi this is cash flow eh. Diba? Savings yan eh. Makakamura tayo ng 100,000. Tapos, magkano ba yung binayad natin tax? 22,500. So, deduct na lang natin. Savings natin, cash inflow. Ito yung outflow. So, ang net effect niyan is 77,500. Diba? Same lang sila. Or, pwede rin ganito. Tingnan nyo. Meron tayong savings, 100,000. If wala tayong depreciation, ang tax due natin is 25,000. Diba? That is 100,000 times 25. Kung wala tayong depreciation, so lalaki yung tax natin. Pero dahil may depreciation tayo, meron tayong tax shield na tinatawag, which is yung depreciation amount natin na 10,000 times 25,000. Teka lang, baka nagtataka kayo, bakit 10,000 lang yung depreciation? Yan ay dahil ang operating depreciation natin currently is 40,000. May 40,000 depreciation tayo. Tapos meron tayong directly attributable cost na capitalizable sa ating PPE na 200,000 divided by 4, that is 50,000. Ito yung current depreciation natin. Ito yung previous. So meron tayong incremental depreciation na 10,000. Tama ba? So yung incremental lang ang mahalaga sa atin. Tandaan nyo sa lahat ng cash flows dito, incremental cash flows lang ang mahalaga sa atin. Yung increase lang. Okay? So, yung increase lang in cash flows, which is in depreciation. Tama ba? Yun lang siya. So, 10,000 times 25, that is 77,500. That's what I mean. So, same lang yan, ha? Tingnan nyo, yung tax due niya, 25,000. So, ang total tax niya, binayaran niya, same pa rin. 22,500. Nakasave tayo ng 2,500 dahil meron tayong depreciation. Last, what is the net present value? So, ang net present value natin, kunin lang natin ang ating cash flows. So, ang operating cash flow natin is 77,500. Terminal cash flow natin is 15,000. Ang initial cash flow natin is 105. So, ang initial cash flow, this is an outflow. This is an inflow. And this is an inflow din. Kaya positive sila. Tama ba? Tapos, mumultiply natin sila sa PV nila. Actually, itong operating cash flow, dahil every year siya nakukuha, pwede na lang natin gamitin is yung PV of ordinary annuity. Para shortcut na lang. So, multiply natin yan, makukuha natin yung kanilang PV, di ba? Tapos ito rin. Itong terminal cash flow, may earn pa natin siya at the end of the 4 years. So, multiply natin siya sa PV at the end of the year 4. Itong 105, multiply natin siya sa 1, makukuha natin yan. Tandaan nyo lang din ang PV of initial cash flow is always equal to 1. Dahil year 0 yan. Okay? Year 0 yan. So, ayan, makuha natin ang net present value na equal to 150,912. Okay, dito na tayo. A company is considering a project with a cash inflow of 14,000 for 5 years and the cost of the project is 42 years. So, what is the internal rate of return closest to? So, pag internal rate of return, ang pwede nyo gamitin is i-substitute nyo yung mga values na to. Tapos, kunin nyo yung PV nila. Tapos, yun yung kukunin nyo para makuha itong 42,000. Kasi, ang PV of inflows at PV of outflows Ang difference silang dalawa is yung net present value. And at IRR, ang net present value natin is equal to 0. Always yan. So, 42,000. So, kukunin nyo yung internal rate of return, yung PV factor, na kailangan i-multiply sa 14,000 para maging 42,000. So, pwede nyong gamitin, i-substitute nyo to, kunin yung PV nila, tapos hanggang sa makuha nyo yung closest to 42. Pero, if given yung PV table, for example, ganito, or check nyo sa dulo ng exam sheet nyo, kung mayroong table ng PV factors, pwede nyo gamitin yon to solve the IRR. So, alam natin, ang PV of cash outflow is 42 times 1. Diba? So, makuha natin dito yung PV factor natin. 42, ito yung PV factor natin 42 divided by 14. So, that is equal to, tama bang 3? 42 divided by 14. O nga, tama, that is 3. 3,000. So, ayan ang ating PV factor. Now, nakuha natin PV factor. Hanapin natin dito sa table yung closest to 3. And that is 20%. Kasi 2.99 ang kanyang PV of ordinary annuity of 1 peso for 5 years. Okay, so letter D ang sagot. Ito na. A project has an initial cost of 100,000 and generate a present value of cash inflows of 120,000. What is the project's profitability? So, for this, ang ating profitability index is equal to PV of inflows over PV of outflows. Ulit ko nga. So, this is equal to 120,000 divided by 100,000. So, this is equal to 1.2. So, letter B. Hello, ito na, last na, nasa economics na tayo. So, number 67, an improvement in technology that in turn leads to improved worker productivity would most likely result to, so pag nagkakaroon ng increase in technology, nagkakaroon ng increase in production. Kasi di ba mas dumadali yung ating production. So, ibig sabihin niya ng ating supply curve, ano yung supply curve natin pag ganito? Di ba? Ang supply curve natin, mag-shift to the right. So, ang sagot natin dyan is letter A. A decrease in the price of a complementary good will. So, ano ba ang complementary goods? Ang complementary goods, siya yung mga goods na pag tumaas yung price niya, bababa ang demand niya. Di ba? Tapos yung related goods sa kanya is same ang effect sa kanyang demand. Okay? So pag nag-decrease daw ang price ng complementary good, ang related good sa kanya, ito yung related. Pag nag-decrease ang price niya, tataas yung demand sa kanya, tataas din ang demand sa ating related goods. So, shift the demand curve of the joint commodity to the right. Letter D. Okay. Demand for a product tends to be price inelastic if. So, ano ba yung price inelastic? Ano ba yung price elasticity? So, ang elasticity na concept is yung change in price. Actually, halos lahat naman mag-change yung price. Pero ang tanong, gaano sila ka-sensitive sa change in price? Pag ba nag-decrease yung price, pag ba nag-change yung price, malaki ba ang effect nito sa quantity demanded? Or wala masyadong effect? Ibig sabihin ng elastic demand, malaki yung effect. For example, nagkaroon ng increase sa price na 10%, ang effect niya sa ating demand decreased by 15%. So, mas malaki yung effect niya. So, sensitive siya to changes in price. Whereas, ang inelastic demand, insensitive to price. Nagkaroon ng 10% increase, 5% decrease lang sa demand. So, paano nangyayari itong inelastic yung demand? If few good substitutes lang ang meron sa product na yon. Ibig sabihin, pag nagtaas ng presyo, walang choice masyado yung consumer sa alternative products. Diba? So, wala masyadong changes sa kanyang demand. Yun. Wala siyang alternative products. In any competitive market, an equal increase in both demand and supply can be expected to always. Okay, ang nangyari daw, parehas gumalaw ang demand and supply curve. Ang demand curve natin, pababa, di ba? So, bakit pababa? This is the quantity and this is the price. So, tandaan nyo lang din ang concept ng demand curve natin is always pababa yan. Pag bumababa yung price, tumataas yung quantity demand. Pag tumataas yung price, bumababa yung quantity demand. Okay? So, ayan. Ang nangyari daw, mag-i-increase daw ang ating supply and demands. Ang supply naman, pag tumataas yung price, tandaan nyo ang price na pinag-uusapan dito is selling price, hindi input price, ha? So, pag tumataas yung selling price, syempre yung mga suppliers gusto nila magbenta ng mas madami. Di ba? So, tumadami yung supply. Pag mababa yung selling price, syempre, unti lang yung magbebenta yan. Mababa lang margins sila eh. So, ang mangyayari daw, if both yung supply curve and the demand curve mag-shift to the right, so, ibig sabihin, yung demand curve mapupunta dito. Ayan. Ibig sabihin yan, yung market clearing quantity natin tataas. Sure tayo na tataas yung quantity natin. Kasi nag-move siya, yung equilibrium natin from this to this. Pero, yung price natin, yung change in price, is indeterminate. Hindi natin sure kung ano yung effect sa price. Pero yung quantity, sure tayo, move to the right. Okay? Which of the following will cause a shift in the supply curve of a product? So, letter A, change in the price of the product. No. Kapag nag-change in the price of the product, ibig sabihin lang yan, from this point to this point, gumalaw lang. Diba? So, no. Change in consumer taste, supply curve. This is related sa demand. Diba? Change in the number of buyers in the market. Again, that is in demand. Change in production taxes. That is true. Makaka-affect yan sa ating input prices. So, letter B ang sagot. Next, when the national government imposes health and safety regulations on certain products, one of the most likely results is when national government imposes health and safety regulations on certain products, one of the most likely results is higher prices for the product. Diba? So, ibig sabihin yan, pag naglagay daw ng health regulation, nagkakaroon ng additional cost dun sa ating supplier. So, yung mga cost na yun, diba? Kung tataas yung cost niya, tapos hindi siya magbabago ng price, yung margins niya, liliit, di ba? Ikaw nga supplier, gusto mo yung margins mo, ma-maintain mo yan. So, para hindi ka, yung gross profit mo, same pa rin, tataasan mo rin yung selling price mo. So, tataas yung prices for the whole economy. Ganun siya. Next, price ceilings and price floor. So, eto medyo nalilito yung iba dito. Pag price floor, nagkikreate yan ng surplus. Yung nasa taas yan ng equilibrium. Yung price ceiling, nasa baba yan kasi nagkukos yan ng shortage. So, bakit shortage? Tingnan nyo. Kapag price floor, mataas yung supply. Supply is greater than the demand. Pag price ceiling, demand is greater than the supply. Tama ba? So, shortage, di ba? Ito mas marami yung supply, ito mas marami yung demand. So, ang price floor, ginagawa to protect yung industries. So, example, yung recent lang, yung sa mga kamatis. Yun yung actually best example dito, yung kamatis. Nagkaroon ng anihan sa atin, at the same time, nag-import ang government ng kamatis. So, nangyari, yung importation is mas mura kaysa sa locally produced na kamatis. Since mas mura ang kamatis nila, yung demand ng mga tao sa kamatis hindi naman nagbago eh. So dumami yung supply, tapos yung supply from importation, mas mababa yung price. So kung ikaw ay isang consumer, anong bibilhin mo? Yung mura o yung mas mahal? Siyempre yung mura. Nangyari, nawalan ng demand dun sa mga locally produced kamatis. Wala nang gustong bumili. Dahil mas mura yung importation. Nangyari is no choice yung mga farmers to hindi naman nila mabebenta na. So, sinira na lang nila. So, ang pwedeng gawin ng government doon in that scenario is mag-create ng price floor. Dahil yung selling price ng imported products is lower than the locally produced para mapilitan yung mga imported products na taasan yung price nila. 'Di ba? Kasi this causes an increase in price eh. Para maipilitan yung mga imported products na itaas yung price nila, nagke-create ng price floor. Kasi ang ginagawa nito is minimum price. Para yung locally produced and imported mag-equal yung price nila. So, kung ikaw yung consumer, okay lang kahit saan ka bumili. Ganon. Now, price ceiling, nangyayari naman to in shortage. 'Di ba? So, sobrang taas ng demand sa supply. So, ang nangyayari kasi dito, kapag nagkakaroon ng shortage, yung mga price ng goods, sobrang tumataas. 'Di ba? To the point na umaabot ng 1,000 yung 1 kilo ng sili. 'Di ba? Naalala nyo yun, noong pandemic, sobrang mahal ng mga kamatis, ay ng sibuyas, pati sili. 'Di ba? Naabutan nyo yun. Ngayon, ginagawa ng government itong price ceiling to set a maximum price. So, pwede sila mag-set ang price at price ceiling or below the price ceiling para bumaba yung price. So, sineset nito is maximum. And this is done to produce the effect of supporting the consumers. Gusto natin protektahan yung consumers dito kasi sobrang taas na ng price para magkaroon ng limit yung nasa market at saka maprotektahan yung consumers sa sobrang excessive na pricing. Diba? So, nagsiset ang price ceiling. So, tandaan nyo, price floor, nasa taas yan. Kasi minimum price yan. Price ceiling, nasa baba kasi maximum price. Medyo nakakalito, pero sana maintindihan nyo yung logic niya. So, may kita nyo kagad dito, yung demand. Yung demand niya, mababa lang yung quantity. Supply niya, mataas. Dito rin, yung supply niya, mataas. Ay, mababa. Dito, demand niya, mataas. Diba? So, shortage and surplus. Next, it is a sequence of economic activity in a nation's economy that is typically characterized by 4 phases. Recession, recovery, growth, and decline. So, ito yun. Ito yung ating business cycle na tinatawag. So, assuming na nagagamit natin lahat ng resources natin, ito yung tinatawag nating full employment. Use all resources. Now, ito yung ating GDP. Real GDP yan. Tapos, every time, hindi naman palagi yung estimate natin nagkakatotoo. So, yung GDP natin, it can be greater than yung ating full employment of all resources or lesser. Diba? So, nangyayari dito, patandaan nyo na lang yung mga parts. Yung peak, yung trough, yung decline. So, yung decline nangyayari from this peak pababa. Yung recession, this is 2 quarters of decrease in economic activity. 2 quarters yan. So, pag lumala yung recession, it will be a depression. So, ayan, from trough, magkakaroon ng recovery. Tapos, pag lumagpas na ulit tayo sa full employment, we have growth. Tapos, tandaan nyo na lang din, may tawag tayong inflationary gap. Inflationary gap dahil ito, yung production natin mas mataas kaysa sa ating full employment. So, ibig sabihin yan, tumataas yung consumptions ng mga tao. Diba? So, pag tumataas yung consumption ng tao, tumataas yung pricing. Kasi syempre, mas gusto ng businesses na mag-price ng mas mataas. And also, kapag na-stimulate kasi economy natin, tumataas yung aggregate demand, tumataas din yung inflation natin. Yun, kaya nagkakaroon ng inflationary gap. Pag naman nagkakaroon ng recession or recessionary gap, nagkakaroon ng deflation or disinflation. Okay. Yun na, i-define ko na rin din. Ang disinflation ay hindi deflation. Ang disinflation, for example, meron tayong deflation ngayon na 5%. Tapos, next year, nagkaroon ng 3% na inflation lang. So, nagkaroon ng disinflation. Inflation pa rin siya, pero bumaba yung rate. Kapag deflation kasi, bumababa yung value. For example, 5%. Ganyan. Okay? Bumababa yung inflation. So, tumataas yung purchasing power ng peso natin. Okay? Okay, economic markets that are characterized by monopolistic competition have all the following except one seller of a product. So, this is a monopoly. Ang monopolistic competition, para maintindihan nyo na lang din, ang pinakamagandang example is yung cellphones. Ang cellphones, technically, isang product lang ang binibenta nila, which is cellphone. Pero maraming brands yan, di ba? Maraming brands yan. Tapos, nagkakaroon sila ng differentiation. Same product, cellphone, pero nadi-differentiate nila. May mga features na wala yung isa na meron yung isa. Ganon. Ayan. So, economies of scale, advertising, and ayan. Okay? So, this is letter A. Ito yung mga characteristics ng monopolistic competition. A natural monopoly exists, letter C. Economic and technical conditions permit only one efficient supplier. Ito yung sobrang laki na ng scale na to the point na isa lang talaga yung pwedeng maging entity. For example, yung national grid ng Philippines, nag-iisa lang yun. Diba? Sa sobrang laki ng scale, isa lang yung feasible na entity mag-exist. Next, which type of economics market structure is characterized by many firms selling a differentiated product with no significant barriers to entry? Okay, so ang key term is differentiated product, tapos no significant barriers to entry. That is monopolistic competition, letter D. Which is not a key assumption of a perfect competition. So, homogeneous product. So, same pa rin ang product nila, di ba? Homogeneous yun. Kapag monopolistic competition, heterogeneous. Ibig sabihin, differentiated yung products sila. Technically, same sila ng foundation, cellphones. Pero may pinagkaiba, differentiated na sila. Dito, kahit ano, magkamukha sila. For example, mga agricultural produce. Kahit saan ka naman bumili, pare-parehas lang yan. A customer are indifferent about which firm they buy from. So that is true. Yan yung perfect competition. The level of a firm output is small relative to the industry's total output. That is true. Each firm can price its product above the industry price. No. Ang perfect competition, ang tinatawag natin sa kanila ay price taker. Dahil kung ano yung price sa market, kinukuha lang nila. Gagayahin lang nila ano yung price sa market. Yung market yung nagde-decide ng price for them. Okay? So, letter D. If we are to build a model measuring the supply of corn, which of the following could be an example of exogenous variable in the model? Ang ibig sabihin ng exogenous variable is yung mga variables na hindi sila kayang kontrolin. Independent variables ba? Kung iisipin nyo. So, price of corn, pwede yan. Supplied corn, quantity supplied, pwede yan. Demand for corn, yes. Pwedeng i-measure yan sa model natin. Pwede sila maging dependent variable. Ang independent variable dito is yung quantity of rain. Ito, in macroeconomic terms, the aggregate demand is, letter D, total expenditures of consumer goods and investment, including government and foreign expenditures, given during a given period. So, ito yun. Aggregate demand is equal to C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So, may kamukha siya, di ba? Kamukha niya yung GDP using expenditure method. So, tandaan nyo na lang din, ang aggregate demand is a measure of GDP. So, isang way para ma-measure ang GDP is using the aggregate demand, which is yung expenditure method. So, yung consumer spending, business investments, government spending, and net exports. So, yan yun. Letter D. Lahat ng consumption sa ating economy, yan yun, aggregate demand. Okay. Ito na. A period of rising inflation. Kapag rising inflation, tumataas ang ating price level, which negatively affects ang ating purchasing power of money. So, letter D ang sagot natin dyan. The most effective fiscal program to help reduce demand pull inflation would be, so alam natin dito, fiscal policy, tapos demand pull, nagkakaroon ng inflation. So, ang inflation, gusto natin pababain ang inflation. So, paano natin gagawin yan? So, fiscal policy, ulitin ko lang uli, ang fiscal policy, meron niyang dalawang choice. Dalawa lang pwede mong galawin sa fiscal policy. Taxes and spending. Taxes and spending lang. So, taxes, Pwede tayong mag-increase or decrease ng tax. Pwede tayong mag-increase or decrease ng spending. So, anong nangyayari pag nag-increase tayo ng tax? Pag nag-increase tayo ng tax, bababa yung disposable income ng mga tao. Tama ba? Pag nag-decrease tayo ng spending, bababa yung ginagastos ng government. So, ang cash ni government tumataas. Diba? Pag tumaas ang cash ni government, yung cash ni consumer, bumababa. Pag mababa ang cash na hawak ni consumer, ibig sabihin yan, bababa ang aggregate demand. Bababa yung i-consume niya di ba? Kasi wala na siyang extra disposable income. Pag bumaba ang aggregate demand, bababa ang inflation, bababa ang ating GDP. Okay? So, letter D. If the government were only to use fiscal policy lang uli. Tapos recession naman. So, in a period of recession, ang gagawin natin, decrease taxes and increase government spending. So, ano nangyayari dito? Bababa yung cash na meron si government. Pag bumaba yung cash na meron si government, ibig sabihin na transfer yan kay consumer. Tataas ang cash na meron si consumer. Pag tumaas ang cash na meron si consumer, syempre mas marami siyang pwedeng i-consume. Tataas ang ating aggregate demand, tataas ang ating GDP, and tataas ang ating inflation. Okay? So, letter D. So, ito, number 85. Which one of the following has an inverse relationship with the demand of money? That is interest rates. May kita nyo dito, ito yung ating money supply and money demand curve. Ito siya. So, ang demand for money is not the demand for cash. It is the demand to hold money, liquid cash. Diba? Lahat naman tayo may demand sa pera, pero hindi natin lahat gusto na may hawak na cash. Kasi if mataas ang interest rate sa bangko, iwan na lang natin siya sa bangko. Diba? So, wala tayong cash na hawak ngayon. If mababa ang interest rate, kukunin ko na lang yung pera ko sa bangko, tapos gagastusin ko na lang. Diba? I-invest ko na lang sa ibang bagay, magkakaroon pa ako mas malaking return. So, yun. Yung interest rate, may inverse relationship siya sa demand for money. Okay So, anong nangyayari pag tumaas ang ating money supply, yung interest rate bumababa. Pag bumababa ang ating interest rate, ito money supply increases. Pag ating interest rate bumaba, ang ating aggregate demand, ano nangyayari? Diba? Ang interest nga natin bumaba. So, yung demand to hold money, tataas. Tataas ang ating demand. Since tumaas ang ating demand to hold cash, gagastusin na lang natin siya. So, tataas ang ating aggregate demand. Pag tumaas ang ating aggregate demand, tataas ang ating GDP, and in turn, tataas ang ating inflation. Next, pag bumaba ang ating money supply. Pag bumaba ang ating money supply, nakikita nyo dito, tataas yung interest rate. Nandito siya, So, tataas ang ating interest rate. Pag tumaas ang ating interest, bababa ang demand to hold cash. Dahil ayaw na nga natin kunin yung pera sa bangko, bababa ang ating aggregate demand. Kasi nga, hindi natin nagagastos Since hindi natin nagagastos yung pera, nasa bangko lang, nasa GDP natin, bababa. Since bababa ang GDP, bababa rin ang inflation. Okay? So, ayan. Which of the following instruments of monetary policy is the most important means by which money supply is controlled? So, tatlo ang ating ways to control money supply. Ang ating 3 monetary policy. So, kanina, fiscal policy na pinag-usapan natin. Ngayon, monetary policy naman. Ang monetary policy, nagsiset niyan si BSP. So, that is reserve ratio. Next, that is discount rate. And lastly, ito yung ating open market operation. So, open market operation, ano bang ginagawa? Bakit siya pinaka-important? Dahil ang ginagawa natin dito ay nagbabuy and sell ng securities. So pag tayo ay nagbabuy, ang ginagawa natin as a government, naglalabas tayo ng pera, 'di ba? Tapos kukunin natin securities. Ang nangyayari, nagkakaroon ng direct transfer, 'di ba? Nag-i-invest tayo sa mismong economy natin. Pag tayo naman ay nag-sell ng securities, government security, ibibigay natin security, kukunin natin cash. Nangyayari, yung pera na yon mapupunta lang sa treasury natin. Hindi na siya iikot sa economy. So, bababa ang money supply. Gets? So, pag tayo ay nag-buy ng security, tataas ang ating money supply. Pag tayo ay nag-sell ng securities, kukuha tayo ng security, di ba? Ay, tayo nag-sell, ibibigay natin security, tapos makaka-receive tayo ng cash, bababa ang money supply. Okay? Discount rate. Pag tumaas ang interest rate, nakikita nyo naman dito, pag tumaas ang interest rate, ano nangyari? Anong bababa? Ang ating money supply. Tapos mangyari to. Ito. Yan sa taas. Pag bumaba naman ang interest, ito yung mangyari. Tataas ang money supply. Next, reserve ratio. Ang reserve ratio, yan yung pera na iniiwan sa bangko. Okay, so pag tumaas ang ating reserve ratio, ibig sabihin, bababa ang ating money supply. Diba? Kasi mas marami yung perang may iwan sa bangko eh. Pero kapag bumaba ang ating reserve ratio, tataas ang ating money supply. So, ito yung magiging effect niya na. Tingin kayo sa taas na lang. Ito. Yung money supply. Ito yung magiging effect niya sa economy. Next. The rate of unemployment caused by changes in the composition of unemployment opportunities over time is referred to as the structural unemployment. Ayan, structural unemployment yan. Ang frictional unemployment, ito yung transition period. For example, kakagraduate nyo lang, naghahanap kayo ng trabaho, or galing kayo sa isang trabaho, tapos lilipat kayo sa iba. Yung unemployment time nyo, yun yung frictional unemployment. Yung cyclical unemployment naman, this is caused by the recession. So, nagkakaroon ng downscaling kasi ng economy doon. So, dahil nagda-downscale yung economy, magdi-descale yung mga companies, magliliit sila. So, magtatanggal sila ng tao. Yung structural unemployment naman, this is caused by changes in the needs in the labor market. Diba? So, for example, hindi na relevant yung skill mo sa labor market, nagkakaroon ng structural unemployment. Okay, ito. Which of the following is part of the labor force? So, ang labor force, kasama dyan yung discouraged workers? Kasama ba? No. Hindi kasama dyan. Ang labor force, ito yung mga taong naghahanap ng trabaho. Able to work. Kapag able to work, you are greater than or equal to 15 years old. Sabi ni PSA yan ha. PSA. You're able to work greater than or equal to 15 years old. Tapos, you are willing and looking for work. So, kung hindi ka naghahanap ng trabaho, hindi ka masasama sa labor force. Okay? Kung hindi ka willing maghanap ng trabaho, you are not part of the labor force. Kaya nga nakakagulat, di ba? Kung titingnan nyo, unemployment rate, ang unemployment rate ay kinukonsider lang ay yung mga nasa labor force. Yung mga taong naghahanap ng trabaho. So, kung hindi sila naghahanap ng trabaho, hindi na sila kasama dun sa unemployment rate. Okay? So, hindi kasama sa labor force ang discouraged workers. Ang discouraged workers, ito yung mga trabahador na hindi na naghahanap ng trabaho. Ganun sila. Ayaw na maghanap ng trabaho. Naging permanently sa bahay na lang. Ganun. Letter B. Persons not available to work due to permanent disability. So, ayan yan. They are not able to work. Persons who are not looking for work because of schooling. So, able to work na sila, 15 years old. Pero hindi sila naghahanap ng trabaho kasi nga may iba silang pinagkakaabalahan. Letter C, persons who are looking for work but unable to find one. So, ayan yun. Sila ay part pa rin ng labor force. Sila ay unemployed nga lang. Okay, so letter C ang sagot natin dyan. Next. Blank is the empirically observed relationship between unemployment and losses in the country's production. It predicts 1% increase in unemployment will usually be associated with a 2% drop in GDP. Likewise, a 1% increase in employment is associated with a 2% GDP increase. So that is letter A, Okun's law. So hindi nyo na kailangan kabisaduhin. Sana madaanan nyo lang to. Kasi just in case lang naman, malabas, di ba? So, ang tawag dyan ay Okun's law. Kapag nag-increase ang ating unemployment, may 2%, 2 times effect sa ating GDP. Okay, suppose that the population is 50 million. Sa 50 million daw, 40 million ang nasa labor force. Tapos, 10 million, syempre, hindi na sa labor force. 2 million are classified as unable to work. So, nandito yan. Yung 2 million na yan. Tapos, 1 million is classified as unwilling to work. Unwilling, nandito rin yan. Yung 1 million na yan. What is the unemployment rate? Tapos 36 million daw ay employed. So 36 employed, yung 4 million unemployed. So dito lang tayo may ipaki, inasa taas. Ito lang ang labor force natin eh. So 4M over 40 million. So that is 10%. Letter A. Next. Exchange rates are determined by, syempre, supply and demand in the foreign currency market. Kung ano yung gusto ng market, dun tayo. So, ano nangyayari pag ang ating peso ay nagde-decline in value? Ano yung pinakamalaking possible na mangyari? So, ang pinaka-possible na mangyari dyan is tataas yung exports natin. Bakit? Kasi relatively, kung mababa ang peso, ibig sabihin mataas ang US dollars. USD. Dahil mas mataas yung value nila, yung cost ng products natin mas mura. Diba? So, bibili lang sila sa atin kasi mas mura sa atin. Kasi mas lower yung value ng peso natin. Gets nyo? So, pag mas mababa yung value ng peso, mas maraming exports. Pag mas mataas ang value ng peso, mas mataas naman ang imports. Gets? Ganun siya. Kasi kung mataas yung value ng peso, ibig sabihin, mura sa labas. Bibili na tayo sa labas. Ganun. Number 93 to 95. A government is considering to give transfer payments or ayuda to each of its 1 million citizens of 10,000 pesos each. An average citizen will use 6,000 of this for consumption and save the 4,000. So, ang ating marginal propensity to consume is equal to change in consumption over change in income. So, for an individual level, that is 6,000 over 10,000. So, this is equal to 0.6. Now, ang ating marginal propensity to save is equal to 4,000 over 10,000, which is equal to 0.4. Notice na they are equal to 1, di ba? So 0.6 plus 0.4, that is equal to 1 dahil income is equal to savings plus consumption. Di ba? Iisa lang pinanggalingan nila. Now, dito may measure natin yung GDP, tinatawag natin multiplier effect. So, dito kayo mag-focus. Spending multiplier is equal to 1 over MPS and total GDP change is equal to spending multiplier times the change in consumption. So, ang spending multiplier, that is 1 over MPS. Ano ba MPS natin? 0.4. Ang change in consumption, total change to that is equal to 1 million times 6,000. So that is equal to 6 billion. 6 billion. Now, 1 over 0.4, that is equal to 2.5 times 6 billion, which is equal to 15 billion. And that is letter A. Okay, next, 96. A country has the following information. Oranges, bread loaf, luncheon meat. So, ang CPI kasi, ang measure nito is yung price ni market basket in current year over the price of market basket in the base year. Ang nangyayari dito, constant tong quantity natin. Ito, constant yan. Tapos, imumultiply lang natin siya depende sa ating prices. So, for example, base year natin, palaging 100 yan. So, wag na natin i-solve. Dito na lang tayo sa second year. So, 15 15 times 100, that is 1,500. Next, 40 times 52, that is 2,080. 104 times 20, that is, ito ulit, 2,080 pa rin. In total, that is 5,660. So, yan yung ating market basket in current year, 5,660. Over yung market basket naman in base year, kunin natin. So, 10 times 100, that is 1,000. Tapos, 50 times 40, that is 2,000. Tapos, 100 times 20, that is 2,000 ulit. So, this is 5,000. Diba? So, 5,000 times 100. So, this is equal to 5,660 divided by 5,000 times 100. That is equal to 113.2. Yun ang CPI natin for 2026. 113.2. So, for 2027 naman, kunin din natin. So, that is equal to, ito, 18 times 100, 1,800. Dito ko nalalagay 1,800. Tapos, 56 times 40, 2,240. Tapos, 1,110 times 20, that is equal to 2,200. Okay, so in total, that is equal to 6,240. 6,240. So, makuha natin ang inflation, ay ang CPI, 6,240 over yung base year pa rin, 5,000 times 100. So, this is equal to 124.8. So, paano makuha yung inflation? That is yung difference nila. So, dito alam na kagad natin na 13.2. Sa 2027, that is 124.8 minus 113.2. Yung previous year, hindi base year. Divided by 113.2. Okay? So, 124.8 minus 113.2 divided by 113.2. That is equal to 10.25. So, ang sagot natin, ito. Letter C. Next, nominal GDP and real GDP. Tandaan nyo na lang, ang nominal GDP, ang nagbabago naman sa kanya, anong meron sa nominal GDP? Yung prices. Diba? Naka-base siya sa current year prices. Ang real GDP, naka-base yan sa base year prices. So, from this, makuha na natin. So, kunin na lang natin kagad sa 2026. So, ang GDP natin for 2026, sa nominal GDP, naka-base sa current year prices. So, 520 times 110, that is 57,200. Ito yun 520 times 110. Ito naman. 1050 times 30. That is 31,500. So, ang real GDP natin is equal to 88.7. Diba? Ganun lang siya. Next. Yung real GDP naman, try natin. Real GDP for 2026 din, sige. Naka-base tayo sa base year, which is 2025. So, 500 times yung quantity. So, 500 dito, ito. 500 times 110. 500 times 110, that is equal to 55. Next, 1,000 times 30. That is 30,000. So, ang ating real GDP is 85,000. So, ito yun. Tama na siya. Ito, di ba? Pero, hindi pa natin sure kung ano yung 2027. So, 2027, ganun ulit. Current year sa nominal, Tapos, base year sa real. So, try natin 600 times 112, that is equal to 6,700. Tapos, 1075 times 32, that is 400. So, in total, that is 101,600. So, yan ang ating nominal. Ito yung real. yan. Next, ang real for 2027. So, that is 500 times 112 chairs, 56,000. Tapos, multiply natin 1,000 times 32. That is 32,000. So, that is equal to 88,000. Ito ang ating real for 2027. Okay? So, paano ba kinukuha ang deflator? Deflator is nominal GDP over real GDP. Okay? So, nominal over real. So, palagi yan, 100 yan at the start. Diba? Kasi same sila eh. Next, ang nominal GDP is 88.7 over 85. So, that is equal to 104. Next, 101.6 divided by 88, that is equal to 115. Okay? Dito yan, 104. Tapos, inflation rate. Tandaan nyo, inflation rate, palagi naman ang changes yan. Diba? So, current year minus prior year, last year yan, over prior year. So, ganun lang. Yung GDP deflator ng current year, which is 104 minus 100 over 100, this is equal to 4%. Tapos, yung for 2027, that is 115 minus 104 over 104, which is equal to 10.58%. So, that is letter A. Dito na nagtatapos yung ating Management Services pre-week. Sana yung mga alam nyo na-refresh ko man lang, nakatulong man lang ako sa inyong review, lalo na sa ating face-to-face and sa mga online natin. Diba? So, good luck sa darating na board exam. Galingan nyo. Hopefully, magkita tayo sa O-taking. Diba? Kayang-kaya nyo yan. Naniniwala ako sa inyo. Kung di nyo pa kayang maniwala sa sarili nyo, ako naniniwala ako sa inyo. So, galingan nyo ha. Magkikita pa tayo sa O-taking. So, see you there. Good luck, Pinnacle Babies.